Your network at 25 is your deal flow at 40.
The black swans, which are supposed to be one in a million, now happen every Tuesday afternoon.
Is finance still a stable long-term career path in the age of automation?
Automation is going to play a role, whether we like it or we don't like it.
Yeah.
After every round of automation, there are some winners and there are some losers. So we have to make sure that our students end up in the first category.
Automation will take away a lot of grunt work, a lot of drudgery.
Last year, Jane Street made more trading income, $40 billion, compared to JP Morgan, $36 billion. They have 3,500 people. 1/100 of the people of JP Morgan, very small setup. The only way they can do this is they are relying heavily on technology and the top class people.
Hello everyone and welcome to Beyond Boundaries, the official podcast by MAHE Dubai. My name is Sophia Anjam and today we're exploring a powerful theme, shaping the future of finance leadership. Leadership in finance today is no longer just about numbers. It's about judgment, risk intelligence, adaptability, and the ability to lead in uncertainty. For students aspiring to enter finance and for parents guiding their children towards the right education path, the big question is no longer which degree, but which environment creates leaders. To explore both the academic depth and the real-world execution lens, I'm joined by two powerhouses in their respective fields. Let's begin. Joining us first with an academic perspective of the real-world execution is Sharad Gupta, co-founder and senior partner at Alptech, a firm working at the intersection of computational finance, AI, and data engineering. Having worked with multinational banks like Citibank and Standard Chartered Bank and international geographies of India, Bahrain, and the UAE for over 2 decades. He brings the industry voice where theory meets deadlines, data meets judgment, and leadership is tested in real time. Mr. Sharad Gupta.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a distinguished academic leader who has been instrumental in shaping finance education in the region and beyond. Dr. Praveen Gupta, welcome on board. How are you?
Thank you very much.
All right, he is the Dean of Manipal Business School in Dubai, where he focuses on building strong foundations in strategic thinking, financial risk management, and decision making. But the interesting part that I want to talk about is that he is an alumnus of the Queen Mary University of London, Indian Institute of Management Ahmedabad, and Indian Institute of Technology Kanpur. He has worked as an investment banker for nearly 2 decades before transitioning to academia. Welcome on board, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Now, before we begin, as per tradition, we always start this podcast with a question. Now, if you were to define UAE's education in one word, which word would you like to choose? That is a thought to ponder on. Who's going to start first?
If I have to describe UAE's education ecosystem and the future of UAE education in the UAE, that would be convergence.
Interesting.
If you look at UAE as a country, it is a convergence of different ideas.
Correct.
And that is something that is the future of education in the UAE.
Yes.
Here, the authorities are willing to listen and engage with academia. So ultimately, it's going to be a convergence of different ideas, thoughts, philosophies, culture, academia, regulators, government, and the industry.
Wow,
That's how
lots of adjectives also he's used in between. I like that answer. Good job. So yes, the pressure's on you. Which
I know.
word?
After that, it's a tough act to follow. But I think I will choose one word which he used in his conversation, which was future. I will say futuristic.
Nice.
I think the education here is extremely futuristic. The government is very supportive. And I think what is happening in lots of other parts of the world, the education is still seeped in 12th century and 13th century.
Of
I think we
course.
are very, very futuristic about it.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. All right, gentlemen, let's begin now. Dr. Praveen Gupta, I'll ask you this question. So finance has evolved rapidly. You talk about AI, you talk about fintech, you talk about global risk exposure. So from an academic standpoint, how has finance leadership changed compared to even, say, 10 years ago? It's been so rapid.
Yeah, I know. The change is extremely severe, I would say. When we started our banking careers and finance careers about 30 years back, banking used to be very simple.
Yes.
We used to call it, there was a term for it, it was called 363 banking. borrow at 3, lend at 6, golf at 3.
I love that.
Yeah. So basically, go play golf at 3 and do the next deal there.
And they thought it was a very boring thing to do back
I
in
know,
the day also,
yeah.
right?
But now what is happening is, earlier it used to take 3 months to approve a loan.
Right.
You do lots of characteristics analysis and all of that. Now the loans approval happen within 3 minutes.
Yes.
The bots are taking over. The thing is very, very different today. So if you are still living 30 years back, I think you are missing out. So you have to live with the times.
Absolutely. Completely agree with you. I think he made us take a trip down the memory lane also. I'm going to talk a little bit about the 30 years of experience back in the day. But Mr. Sharad Gupta, I'd like to ask you this question, that from the industry lens, when you look at young finance graduates today, what exactly separates those who know finance from those who can actually lead in finance? Because it's a very slippery slope, I'd say.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. So when we look at, and I interview candidates and students all the time, and I've been doing that for many years. So today, technical knowledge is not really a differentiator. Now, and I run a data engineering, AI, and mathematical finance consulting firm, and so don't get me wrong, technical knowledge is extremely important. But most of the kids today know their DCF models, know their ratios, know their IFRS standards, etc. But kids who can actually make the transition to successful professionals needs to move beyond the technical knowledge. And there are a couple of things that they need to sort of think about. One is dealing with uncertainty.
Right.
In an academic world, the best students wants to give the perfect answer, right? But when you move to a professional, real-life scenario, there is no perfect answer.
Yeah.
There is no perfect situation. Situation is always evolving. So you need to be able to think in an uncertain environment and be able to act accordingly. The other important characteristic is communicate.
Right.
How well you actually communicate. If you're not able to explain and deliver the message in the room and convince the CEO on the other side what you're trying to say, this presentation or the analysis is good for nothing. And third is ownership. As a young professional, it is extremely important that whatever you do, you take ownership of it.
Yes.
As if your name is written on that piece of document. And in our business, it actually is. Right?
Of course.
In consulting, we put our name on what we produce. So these are the three things that I would say would look at.
Fantastic. Actually, I wanted to ask this question up next also, that, what are those three kind of, attributes or those qualities that students must have? I would like to take your viewpoint on this as well. Is technical knowledge good enough?
As Sharad earlier said, that technical knowledge is a necessary but not sufficient condition nowadays. So you need to know your basics. Without that, you will not survive. But that itself is not the ticket to the high world of finance.
Right.
So what you have to do is, over and above that, you have to know what is going on in the world around you. So what we do a lot in our education system today, and with my 20 years of work experience and 10 years of academic experience now, I think we mix it pretty well, whereby we give our students the knowledge as well as the experience which is necessary to be successful in today's world.
Absolutely.
So what we do is in our course, you said, what are these three characteristics which students should need? I think one thing which they need a lot today is be flexible, be nimble.
Yeah.
Because whatever we teach them today, most likely in 5 years' time, that would be obsolete. So they will have to be ready to learn new techniques all the time.
So, sir, I'm very interested to know about something over here, because whenever I get to host events, I meet up with a lot of students. They often ask me about, universities with global rankings. And you have been associated with Sharad Business School and University of Oxford. So I want to know about the similarities and the differences when it comes to your experience over here. Please share them.
So it is a very good question because in some aspect, a 18-year-old, whether he's in UK, whether he is in India, or whether in UAE, they are the same.
Yes.
They are bubbling with life. They are high on energy. They want to learn things. So that aspect is common across wherever you go. But then there are certain things which are different. So for example, when I was teaching at Sharad Business School, University of Oxford, it is the top ranked university in the world. And the quality of students which you get there is, really, really top notch.
Of course.
So when I go and teach those students, for every 1 hour of lecture there, I have to prepare 3 to 4 hours because they will ask me questions which I have to be prepared for. And in many cases, I had to tell them, I will get back to you.
Yes.
So that keeps me as an educator on my toes also.
We love it.
And which is an absolute pleasure to have, because that's what we want as an academic. Of course, we want to impart them with knowledge, but in the process, we also want to learn. When I came to Middle East, the experience was slightly different. The students here are slightly more docile, but no less intelligent. So they also are full of questions, full of energies. You just have to get it out of them. In the Western world, I think the world is much more vocal.
Right.
So they come right at you. Here, you have to
Push
take
them
it
a little
out of
bit,
them. Push them a
yeah.
little bit, and then they ask the right questions. They ask the, all the other aspects are largely similar, but you still have to really push them a little bit more. But once they are in their zone,
Element,
in
yes.
their element, in their zone, then they are perfect. And that is why I think there are lots of similarities. There are more similarities than differences. But having said that, at this point in time, what we are preparing students here for is a global career. So whatever we were doing there at Oxford, a lot of that, I would say 80 to 90% of that, we are doing in Manipal Business School in Dubai also.
Fantastic. The world is always changing. That's always there, because change is the only thing which is constant. But really, in the past 10 years, it has changed rapidly. And I don't think that it would be wrong to say that in the next 2 years, it is going to be changing even more. So, Mr. Sharad Gupta, I'd like to ask you this question, that in high stakes financial environments, decisions are often made with incomplete information. Okay, now this is a very important point. How do you train or mentor young professionals to handle that pressure? Because that's tricky.
As I sort of touched upon earlier, the uncertain environment is a given.
Yeah.
So when you are out of college and when you are in a professional life, the base case is that the environment is uncertain.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, in the last few years, the environment has become extremely uncertain with all the geopolitics, and that impacts the financial markets,
Of
that impacts your
course.
business, and that impacts how you operate and
We're
how
living
you,
in
how,
it.
How you run your business and how you build your career. As much as you tell people, the reality is they will learn when they actually work on life situations and work with the seniors in the organization. So whether it is banking, whether it is consulting, financial services is largely an apprenticeship business. So we take young analysts and associates in our team to client meetings where they're actually part of the meeting. They're not contributing to the meeting. They're not expected to contribute. They're too probably young or inexperienced to do that. But the idea really is that they sit there, observe how the conversations are going, observe and see how the seniors in the room are delivering message to a client, which is may not necessarily want to hear the same message, may
Yeah.
want to hear a slightly different message. And how you, if a deal is going sideways, how they are maneuvering and bringing the conversation to the right points.
To pivot or not to pivot? That is
And then you come back to the office and have a debrief on that meeting.
Yeah.
And then you effectively, and that is probably the most important part, because then you can rerun that meeting in slow motion and tell and explain to some of the younger analysts and associates in terms of how the meeting went, what was important, what was not important, what we did right, what we didn't do right, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the various areas where we sort of try and impart knowledge to our younger colleagues.
Wonderfully explained. He's spoken about the industry side in such a wonderful, eloquent way. I want to brush in a little bit of the academic perspective over here. So when you talk about MAHE Dubai, specifically the business school, right? So how does Manipal Business School prepare students beyond textbooks? What frameworks or decision-making principles do you emphasize particularly?
Yeah, so as Sharad was earlier saying, the world has become extremely uncertain,
Yeah.
and that is true for our academic world also. So when the ex-Fed chairperson Ben Bernanke, he wanted to do his PhD 40 years back, 50 years back, I think the only big event, big risk event, uncertain event in the last century was the 1929, Great Depression, and he did his PhD on that. He talked about, things are happening, very, very often nowadays. So this last 25 years, we have had Asian financial crisis, we have dot-com burst, we have global financial crisis, we have European debt crisis, we have had COVID crisis, then we have Ukraine war, and now we are having the Iran-Middle East situation. So The black swans, which are supposed to be 1 in a million, now happen every Tuesday afternoon. Yeah?
Correct.
So now we have to teach our students how to learn with these uncertainties, how to live with them, how to manage them.
Yeah.
And that is what we focus on. And I'm absolutely agreeing with Sharad when he says that irrespective how much we teach them in the classroom, they will only learn, or 80% of the learning will come when they are actually doing it on the job.
Yes.
And that is why lots of our modules have practical elements to them.
Yeah.
So we have case studies, we have real life situations, we have industry assignments, consulting assignments, summer training. So there is a lot of focus on actually learning on the job.
Right.
And which is what the employers are asking, which is what we are teaching them.
Absolutely. I love that. So the next part of my question, I mean, I'm still trying to phrase it because there are two different sets of questions that I have in my mind. But the statement is taking risk as a leader. And how early should you be able to do that?
Yeah.
Right? So that is a thought to ponder on. I'll begin with you.
Look, anything and everything that you do in life has risk.
Yeah.
Right? So there is no risk-free trade in any walk of life. Forget about finance. Anything and everything that you do in life. Now, so when we talk about risk from a financial services industry point of view,
Yeah.
and so there are two ways to look at it. From a leadership point of view, do I want to take risk by putting some of my relatively junior colleagues in front of a client in a difficult situation? That is one type of risk I'm taking, and I'm betting on some of my junior colleagues. The other risk is when I'm running my business, do I shield my juniors and my younger colleagues and manage the situation myself, or some of my senior colleagues manage the situation, so that we don't want to disrupt the client conversation.
Right.
And I think there's a fine balance that you need to meet, right? Because at some point in time, you'll have to expose the younger colleagues to the risks of putting them in front of the client, put them in a difficult situation.
Yeah.
As the old saying goes, you throw them in the deep water and they'll learn how to swim.
Absolutely.
But it has to be with lifeguards. It has to be with proper checks and balances.
Yes.
You are there to support them. You give them enough training before you put them in those difficult situations. But you have to back them up. Even
Absolutely.
if they make mistakes, and they will make mistakes, and everyone will make mistakes. I mean, I make mistakes up until today. I mean,
100%. From a professional point of view, I completely agree. But as a student, somebody who's just learning, how early is it for them to learn this? To
No,
taking
absolutely.
risks?
I think Sharad talked about
Yeah.
the human aspect of risk. When we teach our students about risk, we talked about volatility in their surroundings,
Right.
volatility in their environment, how to manage that. The one thing which I want to do is take this negative connotation with risk. Lots of people think that risk is negative, risk is bad, we should not have it. We tell them from day one, if you're not taking risk, you're not doing anything in life, you're not getting good returns.
Right.
So you have to embrace the risk which is out there. Actually, in the financial world, sometimes we are actually paid more to take more risk. Like if you're putting your money with a hedge fund, you don't want them to do the safe strategy.
Of
That will not
course.
yield the returns which you're asking them.
Right.
So hence, risks are good as long as they are managed well, because the returns come with risk, as Sharad said. But you have to be able to navigate your way through the risk in a proper manner, and that is what we teach them. That do not worry about risk, be careful, but embrace them, because risk will be there at all points in time. As long as you know how to handle them, as long as you know how to manage them,
Yeah.
and maximize the output, that is what we are teaching them.
To be very honest, I am in awe of most of the things that you just said because of your experience. And if I am in awe right now as a professional sitting over here in the media side, so many students would love to know more about your entrepreneurial journey. Walk us through it, the experience.
yeah, it's been incredible. It's been hard. So I was working with Citibank, and I worked there for many, many years. Doing all right, very well settled, very comfortable. 2015-16, I'm, and it's not as if that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. There are some people who always want to be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
I wasn't one of those. But by 2015, 2016, I was really bored, wanted to do something different. Went to my boss, and my boss said, and these were his exact words, I think you are getting paid more and you're working less. That's why you are getting all of these ideas. And
Oh,
probably
he
was
was
right.
wrong, was he?
And probably was right. But I decided to turn entrepreneurial. Took a plunge towards the end of 2016, early 17.
Yeah.
It's been close to 10 years now. In one word, the journey has been a roller coaster.
Yeah.
There are good days, there are bad days, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it. God has been very kind. We're very, very sort of fortunate to be able to sort of sustain this journey up until now, and we are very excited about our future as a company. Couple of things. Extremely important to have your family support.
Yes.
I was in a good, nice, comfortable job with a great international company, big brand, getting decent money. Money is never enough, but it's always enough.
Look at him go. We love it.
And my wife and my kids never, for once, flinched at the idea of me leaving the job and starting something on my own.
Yeah.
Be prepared for a long haul. If you're thinking that grass is always greener on the other side, in 6 months from now I'll have a big successful business, that's not going to happen. Be prepared to 3-year, 5-year, 10-year journey before you can actually build something meaningful. And enjoy the journey. Extremely important. Entrepreneurship is hard. It's lonely. At times you feel, especially for someone like me who had something to lose. I gave up a very good corporate career to start this journey. There is always a possibility of doubts creeping up.
And you actually took a risk.
Why did I do that? And what was the reason to take all of this risk and leave all of that for an uncertain future? So it's extremely important that you enjoy your wins, you enjoy the journey, and keep chugging along. It's a marathon, but it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. If you can think it, you can do it. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
So now comes one of my favorite questions. So we all make mistakes, like you also mentioned. So young professionals, they tend to make a lot of mistakes initially.
Sure.
So let's say during the first 2-3 years of you being a young professional, what are the most common mistakes that you make? And how can we kind of make sure that we guide them or navigate, as you suggested?
We all make mistakes.
Yes.
So professionally, I can talk about some of the mistakes that I have made, which and I always encourage our younger colleagues and even my kids. My kids are now working professionals, and to avoid making some of those mistakes, right? One of the biggest mistakes that we make is not understanding the power of network.
Yes.
So I always tell our younger professionals to network, go out, put themselves out in the market, talk to people, talk to professionals, and learn. So your network at 25 is your deal flow at 40.
Nice.
So if you're not going to build your network when you are young, you are not going to be a successful professional in our business. The other mistake that we make is we tend to work in silos. Now, what I mean by that is, and that actually happens mostly, the smarter the individual is, the more he tend to work in silos. Because he is extremely smart, he or she thinks that he can do things on his own. He'll build a great model or a great pitch or a great presentation without taking other stakeholders into consideration. And a lot of times that doesn't work because different people have different ideas and different thoughts. What you think is perfect may be perfect theoretically in your little world,
right,
but may not necessarily work in a more practical environment.
100%.
So it's extremely important that whatever you're doing, you socialize that idea with your peers, with your seniors, with your juniors, get their inputs, get their buy-in before you actually spend a lot of time and energy and capital on that.
Fantastic. I love that. But now I want to know a story, because we just mentioned stories over here, and both of you went to school together.
Yeah.
You studied together. One was a junior, one was a senior. I want to know the story behind your success. And I want to know the story about your education, you as students, the kind of mistakes you made. How are both of you students? And any secrets, please spill the beans right now. Yes, please.
Yeah, so you're right. I was a couple of years seniors to him in school, and we went to similar. We largely went through the similar journey in our professional world also. So we both went to IIT, although I doubt sometimes he went to Roorkee, which was not an IIT at that
Yes.
point in time. So I still pull his leg on that.
Yes.
Now
yes.
it's an IIT.
We can clearly see that. Yeah.
So we both went to IITs, and then we both went to IIMs. There also, I say that you went to the BIIM, which is IIM Calcutta. I was,
C actually, not even B.
yeah, I went to IIM Ahmedabad. So we largely had the similar journey in terms
Yeah.
of our education. When we joined the working career, we both at that point in time in India, growing up, Citibank used to be
Of course.
the bank. We both joined Citibank largely together. Again, 2-3 years difference here and there.
It was a dream for everybody.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
And then we both largely, again, with a 2-3 year gap, we moved to Middle East together. So we
Yeah.
have lots of stories to share. How much time do you have?
Well, we'll cut it short, okay?
So in terms of, coming back to the question which
Yeah.
you were asking, in terms of, mistakes which we made in our
Yes.
early life, I think one mistake which at least I made in my early life is
Yeah.
I took all the failures and losses in my early life very, very seriously.
Too hard. Yeah.
And that is something which I tell lots of my kids is don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to fail.
Right.
Because no failure is final till you keep trying next time. I give this example, and I think Roger Federer said that in one of the convocation
Yes.
speech, that even at a level of Roger Federer, he loses 46% of the points he plays.
Yes.
46%, and he's Roger Federer, right?
Yes, he's
So
the
think
GOAT.
about it. Who are you? So if you are making mistakes, you are failing, absolutely fine. Keep trying it. Even in trading world, we say that if you are investing in somewhere and you are making profit 55-60% of the time, you are a great trader.
Of course.
So again, don't be worried about failures. Failures will be there. Life is not about perfection. Life is always about optimization. We are not writing a quantum equation and sending a rocket in space. At least not in the business world. Yeah. So in that case, you
Yes.
are allowed to fail. Don't take your failures too hard. Keep trying, because at some point in time, things work out. As the Hindi movie dialogue says, if it is not working out, then it is not the final.
Of
It
course.
will be a final when it works out.
100%. I agree with you. My professor once said that you have to fail. If you don't fail, you will never succeed, because failure is a stepping stone towards success. But now, since he did not spill the beans, okay, I want to ask you the same question related to your experience as a student, studying together, any story to share, and what about your failures as a student that you remember?
In terms of talking about failures and what sort of things that eventually kids should watch out for, is basically it's a marathon. And this is something that Praveen touched upon. I mean, you don't have to win every trade. You don't have to win every day. It's a marathon. It is not a 100-meter sprint. So one of the mistakes that I made was in my initial part of my career was, you're always running for the next promotion and the next big job and next this and next that. I think you're going to be working for 40 years.
The grass
give
is
or take.
always greener on the other
Grass
side.
is always green on the other side, and more importantly, you're going to be working for 40 years.
Yeah.
Have patience.
Yeah.
Every successful professional has gone through their own journey of highs and lows. I don't know of a single person who has not gone through any low.
Correct.
There is a Netflix documentary which just dropped 3 or 4 days ago on Rafael Nadal.
Yes,
called
yes.
Rafa.
It's
I
on
would-
my watch list.
Yeah, I would
Yes.
encourage everyone to watch it. The kind of challenges. I mean, for us, he is the greatest tennis player on the clay
course.
court. But the kind of challenges and issues that he went through and came out of it, and so take every failure as a lesson. Take every setback as a challenge to overcome. Keep moving ahead. It might sound very theoretical and very preachy, but that's the reality.
Yeah.
There is no other shortcut. and
Absolutely,
there's no other way
100%.
around
We
it.
agree with you. So now I'd like to touch upon the parent side.
Sure.
Because parents are always very, very particular about, choosing the right kind of courses and subjects in the future for their kids as well. Now, if you were advising a parent, okay, Mr. Sharad Gupta, I'll start with you. If you were advising a parent whose child wants to enter finance, what would you tell them to prioritize when choosing a university?
No, extremely good question. So look at 2 or 3 things. One is how deeply the faculty is connected to the industry. Do they have any network there? Do they interact with the industry on a regular basis? Do they come from the industry background, some practical background, or not? That's a good indicator. The other is look at the alumni.
Yeah.
Where the alumni is and what are they doing 3 to 5 years after graduating, what jobs they are in. And not just titles. I mean, titles are important, but quite frankly, in this day and age, titles are irrelevant. What is their career trajectory? What are they doing, both as a working professionals or as entrepreneurs, as a lot of professionals are nowadays taking that path. And the third is how closely the university is integrated with the local regional ecosystem.
Right.
So in the context of UAE, if you look at, there are pretty much every single bank and financial institution that you can think of is present in UAE, thanks to DIFC and ADGM, the great infrastructure that these guys have created.
Of course.
Every single asset manager is there, alternative asset managers are there, insurance companies are there, banks are there. And then you have on top of it your fintechs and so on and so forth. How deeply the university is integrated with that ecosystem? Is there exchange of ideas happening? And are there cross pollination of ideas between the industry and the institution?
Yeah.
So I would say these are the three most important things that I would like a parent or a child to consider as they are sort of deciding on which university they want to go to.
Very valid points for sure. And you have interacted with a lot of parents and a lot of students. He's thinking about all those points right now.
No, I'm obviously thinking about lots of parents and students, but I'm also thinking of our role as parents.
Yes.
We have gone through the similar journey ourselves, and we have taken our kids to various open days, to various universities, and we have lived that experience. And we can tell from both perspectives, as a parent as well as an educator and as a dean of a business school here. Take your son or daughter to the university. Make them have a feel about the place. Whether they feel comfortable there. There are some kids who like a city life. There are some kids who like a campus life. So what is good for your kid, a website will not tell you. So my strong advice is do not decide based on just the online / the printed material.
Right.
Take your kid to the university. There is no one size fits all. One of your son might decide to do in New York, and other might decide to do in Dubai, and somebody wants to go to a small village somewhere, or maybe just a campus or something. So again, talk to your child. You think that they are kids, they are not. Nowadays, the information is available. They are doing their own analysis. Listen to them. Treat them like adults. Nowadays, even the UAE has reduced the adulthood to 18 from 21.
Yes, I was actually reading the news.
Exactly. So they are adults.
Yes.
In all manners, they are adults. Talk to them as peers. Ask them about their opinion. And then make a joint decision.
Right.
And that's my advice to parents.
Fantastic. We love that. I think I would like to give both of you a lot of credit as fantastic parents. And I think we really need to learn a lot from both of you, not just as educators and professionals, but as parents as well. So thank you so much for, kind of cushioning that conversation forward. Now, the second last question for this podcast today is, it's going to be a tricky one, but it's still a very important question that often gets to be discussed in various events. Is finance still a stable long-term career path in the age of automation?
Oh, absolutely. I'm from the industry, so I can't say it's not. I may be a bit biased, but on a more serious note, look, automation is going to play a role, whether we like it or we don't like it. I mean, I graduated in 99, Praveen graduated in 96. That was a time when .com boom was really building up, right? 25 years later, when we look back, the reality remains that .com or internet changed everything.
Yes.
But the core skills are still very much required. So whether you are in finance or marketing or product management or business development or in FMCG or whichever industry or business that you may be in. So to that extent, the core skills are not going to go away.
Right.
I think what automation is going to do, the world has been automating since the Industrial Revolution, even before that. I think even the early human beings decided to figure out the invention of wheel. The world has been automating since then. And every phase of automation brings its own challenges,
Of
its own
course,
fears, and its own opportunities.
Yes. It evolved.
So, in my view, I think the automation will take away a lot of grunt work, a lot of drudgery, which is being done by people today. It'll automate it. That anyway is not a bad thing. It doesn't add too much to your career in any case. So to that extent, it's fine. I think what will happen is automation, and we're using sort of automation and AI interchangeably here,
Yes.
is basically gonna give tools to people who can really augment their knowledge and understanding of subject matter and take it to a next level. So if you are really good in your subject matter, there is no upper ceiling, and if you are not, then there is no lower floor. So it's gonna be a bit of a K-shaped. It puts everybody on notice that, just being there, done that, just get a certificate, get a degree, and move forward, and you'll find a job, and you will chug along. That part is over.
Right.
But if you know your subject, if you know your craft, then automation is going to enhance your skills and not reduce.
Interesting. I love the way that you put this. Yes.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on this one?
I think where I come from, automation is the reality of life. We have to live with it. And as Sharad very rightly said, that it has been going on at all points in time. After every round of automation, there are some winners and there are some losers. So we have to make sure that our students end up in the first category.
Of course.
And that is why we are imparting them with those skills, that they are on the upper slope of that K curve, which he was talking about, and not on the downward slope. I'll just give a small example here. I mean, if you look at a company called JP Morgan, right? Everybody has heard of
Yes.
JP Morgan as a bank, has been there for 150 years, 300,000 employees. Everybody has heard of JP Morgan.
Yes.
There's another small company called Jane Street. The first time I heard about them was when my kids were writing a UK Maths Trust, Olympiad exam, year 6, year 7. First time, 10 years back, I heard about them first time.
Right.
Last year, Jane Street made more trading income, $40 billion, compared to JP Morgan, $36 billion. How did that happen? They have 3,500 people. 1/100th of the people of JP Morgan, very small setup. The only way they can do this is they are relying heavily on technology and the top class people. So they are literally hiring top brains, PhDs in mathematics, PhDs in computer science from top institutes. They are really focusing on people and technology. So it doesn't mean that requirement for people has gone away, but they have been able to do what a 150-year-old top bank in the world could not do with 300,000 people. Why? Because the focus has to be crystal clear. That you have to have the top technology, you have to have the top people, and that is the recipe for success. And that is what we train our students for.
Fantastic. So, it's a very common saying that you have to work smart, not that hard. So it's very important for us to understand that as well. Wonderful. We love that. So now comes the last question before we jump towards the final tier of our podcast, which is going to be on the lines of a rapid fire round. And I'm sure both of you, being best friends, also will enjoy that, apart from being industry experts and, a lot of things that are on the platter. One leadership lesson each of you learned the hard way in your career. I know that you had a lot of failures that you mentioned initially that you learned from and you turned them into success. That's how you have this wonderful success story. But let's talk about those moments in your life that you learned the hard way.
I mean, I think I made more than one mistake. So there are a lot of mistakes that I've made, and I suppose most of us make during their career journey. I think one thing which I didn't understand early enough was the importance of bringing everybody on the same page.
Right.
And I touched upon this thing earlier as well. It's extremely important that if you're working on a certain idea, if you're working on a certain transaction, certain project internally within the company, if you are doing that on your own, locked up in a room, irrespective of how good the outcome may be, it won't work. So you need to bring the relevant stakeholders much early into the process, make them part of the process, before you actually start working on the transaction or the assignment. Anything that you're trying to do in a large organization or even in a small organization, you have to take people on board. If you don't take people on board, it's not going to work.
100%. That's a very good lesson.
It's extremely valuable lesson, and I think most of us make that mistake of thinking that what we know is right and what we know is good for my client.
Yes.
That may not be true.
That's true.
And that is why it's always good to hear the opposing view. And that brings me to my big mistakes. I think I started my career in India. We worked in India, then worked in Middle East for a long time.
And the shift in your career, that's very interesting.
You think about that.
Yes.
India, Middle East culturally are very close to each other, right?
Yeah.
And then I moved to London. And that is when I truly understood the meaning of, cross-cultural differences, cross-disciplinary differences. And that is something which I want everybody to be aware of, that we, I think less about it. We don't talk much about it, and we don't give enough importance to this cross-disciplinary nature, cross-cultural nature of the world today.
Right.
The world is much more integrated. If you are expert and deep down expert only in one area, you're not going to succeed. Very, very rare. So you have to take every aspect into account. All the new inventions nowadays are cross-disciplinary.
Yes.
So that's why people should be more open to opposing ideas, more open to those things which are making them uncomfortable.
Right.
That is where the growth is going to come from. That is where the new deals will happen.
And
that
complacency needs to go.
Absolutely. So that is something I want to tell my students, that be open to change, be open to contrarian views, and think about world as a cross-disciplinary, cross-cultural phenomenon.
Let's do it. And let's come back to the phenomena of jack of all trades once again. Well, thank you so very much, gentlemen. And now it's time for the tier, which is the final one, this or that. Okay, so you have to choose one, right? Case studies or live market crisis?
If you're a student, then case studies, because it's very unlikely that it'll be put into a live market crisis situation. If you're a professional, then live market crisis. Good case studies anyway are built based on market crisis.
Okay. That's his choice. Yes.
Live market crisis any day. Sometimes we do small caselets, which we don't give them in advance. We give them in the class, read in the class, no chat GPT, and then we discuss. So practically, we have stopped using case studies, the big case studies.
Right.
Only live transactions. What is happening? So recently, I was teaching a course on corporate valuation, and we didn't teach 80s and 90s and noughties what happened at that point in time. We took a case of Paramount taking over Warner Brothers against Netflix, which was happening at the time when we were teaching.
Very interesting.
So this was from January to June when we were teaching, and the deal was happening. So literally every day the kids could see, this is what we priced yesterday, this is the offer today. So live market crisis, always best for teaching.
Fantastic. So gentlemen, this is supposed to be a rapid fire round. Okay. So you're just supposed to choose. Okay. It's called this or that. Teaching leadership or practicing leadership?
Practicing leadership.
Practicing.
All right. AI-driven finance or human judgment in finance?
Human judgment augmented by AI.
Nice one.
Agree.
Okay. All right. Emerging markets or developed markets?
For me, emerging markets, a lot more exciting, a lot more uncertainty, a lot more volatility.
Emerging market for growth, developed market for scale.
Nice. Stability or scalability?
You cannot scale without being stable. So in sequence, stability and then scalability.
Nice.
Scalability for me. Always, size always matters.
All right. Last two to go. Ethical leadership or competitive leadership?
Ethical leadership.
Ethical.
All right. Last but certainly not the least, impact or influence?
Impact.
Same. Impact.
Yeah. You are definitely friends for sure because you're on the same page. But thank you so very much, gentlemen. It was such a pleasure. We learned so much from both of you. And before we let you go, any take-home message for all the students who are watching the podcast right now, Beyond Boundaries?
Cut the noise. Don't watch too many of these depressing news that AI is going to take away everybody's job. Yes. That's not going to happen. We've seen this story. Humanity has seen this story a number of times. do what you're doing, do the very best in what you are doing, become the master of your subject or your craft, and use AI and use technology to really augment your capabilities. Have a lot of patience. It's a marathon, not a 100-meter sprint.
Note it down, boys and girls. Note it down. Yes, sir.
For me, take risks, make mistakes, and pivot. Be ready to pivot all the time. Life will be fine.
As a Friends fan, I approve. Thank you, gentlemen, once again. I think what stood out today was that finance leadership is no longer about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being the most balanced thinker in the room. For students, build depth, but also build judgment. For parents, choose environments that shape mindset, not just degrees. The future of finance leadership isn't just about understanding markets, it's about leading through uncertainty. And that begins with the right foundation. This was Beyond Boundaries by MAHE Dubai. My name is Sophia Anjam. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep going beyond boundaries. See you next time.